Hello, everyone. Today you have Shanda J, your BCBA, presents Dr. Paulie Giovanni. Are you looking for resources in regards to how to support the adult population? Maybe you're curious to just know what's out there, how it can be applied, how it can be disseminated. Well, you are in the right place. Today we have Dr. Paul Giovanni, who's a BCBA, a renowned leader in the field of applied behavior analysis, best known for integrating behavioral science into real-world applications, spanning crisis management, organizational leadership, and emotional intelligence, with a background in education, human services, and performance systems. Dr. Giovanni has helped shape best practices in de-escalation strategies, staff training, and cultural transformation within high-stake environments. As the author of Deliberate Coaching, Quick Responses for reducing misbehavior and suspensions, and the 5 scientific laws of life and leadership, he equips change. He equips leaders, educators, and clinicians with practical science-driven tools to enhance behavior change, system performance, and compassionate leadership. His work continues to inspire practitioners to challenge outdated systems, uplift human dignity, and foster resilience in both clients and caregivers alike. I'm here to present Dr. Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing lovely, Shonda, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm always honored to be invited, and always love disseminating the science of human behavior. My why in life is to help people. My mission is to empower them to better help themselves and others using behavior analysis. So, thanks for having me on.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. When it comes to the adult population, we need all that we can because, as you know, in the field of ABA, aka Applied Behavior Analysis, a lot of the resources specifically cater to the children and adolescent population. So, whatever we can do to push more resources out there when it comes to supporting adults, we got to do what we can because when it comes to the adult population in regards to mental health and the neurodivergent population, ABA can help them so much. It's just us as practitioners having those tools and knowing how to use them.
That's right.
So, with that being said, you've had a dynamic journey into the world of behavioral science. What personal experiences or pivotal moments first drew you to crisis management and performance systems?
Well, I was trained early on in crisis management because I was working in a residential treatment facility for juvenile sex offenders. So that's originally where I got put in. I was exposed to crisis management, but I didn't choose to go work with sex offenders. It happened because I was a procrastinator, and I had to do an internship for my social work, my master's degree, and it was the only thing left. Nobody wanted that, and it was the greatest experience that I've ever had because when you go to residential, everything comes through there. It's not like the kids go home, right? So you see A to Z, and I saw a lot of stuff. Very sad. I ended up going on and working in a school as a therapist, a clinical therapist, as a social worker, right, mental health therapist, and somebody said, "Hey, if you take this behavior management course around the way, you can make $50 an hour." And I was broke. I had a house and I could barely put gas in the car. So I thought, man, $50 an hour, that would be wonderful. Let me go check it out. In my mind, I thought it was going to be crisis management, like a course. That's when I was introduced to applied behavior analysis. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is always how I thought the world worked, but I didn't have words for it. I didn't understand like these principles of it. And it's, it was, it was life changing. It happened through Behavior Analysis Inc. It was before you had to get your certification at a university. And I really wanted to excel there. Up to that point in school, I just did the least to get by. Not here. I wanted to know this stuff. I always wanted to be number one in the class when the grades came, and I really applied myself. So that was a pivotal point in my life. A pivotal point in my career was when I was working now, moved on as a district behavior analyst and they were asking me to go in and support a classroom where it was a special needs classroom, and they had one or two kids that were giving some behavior challenges. But when I showed up in the parking lot at the school and I was walking in to sign in, I had to walk down a long breezeway. The kids were out of control. It was a mess. And it's a long story. I write about it, talk about it everywhere, so I don't want to get caught up on this one thing. But the school had been trained in something called positive behavior supports, positive behavior intervention supports. It's something that they want teachers to do with the students, right? To teach expectations and create a positive culture. And when the end of the year came and they went from an A to an F to school, they had 792 suspensions. The
Ooh.
deputy superintendent had, it was an elementary school, it was a Title I high poverty school in a high crime area. You know, these poor kids, they really needed stuff, but the people weren't equipped. Well, deputy superintendent came to me and said, "Hey, Paulie, do you think you can help us turn the school around next year?" And I think they wanted me there because I'm a fighter. I'm a crisis management guy. I don't want to be restraining kids, you know. That's not what I want to do, you know. But while I didn't believe in myself, I've always believed in the science of human behavior. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And I went to a colleague of mine. I said, "You know, they got this PBIS for the kids, but I think we kind of need PBIS for the adults, right? Because in order to bring out the best in the children, we have to bring out the best in the adults." And they said there is something like that. It's called organizational behavior management. And they handed me a book called Bringing Out the Best in People by Dr. Aubrey Daniels. And I read it and I thought, okay, this is all the same principles that I've learned in schools. So let me apply some stuff there. And that set me on a journey. I wrote a book, Quick Wins, about what I did in the school. And man, it changed my entire life because I've dedicated my life to this, to helping embed good systems with good leadership. And I've defined leadership behaviorally. And I believe that good leadership can help so many people, right? Including if we, in our organizations where we're supporting learners with needs, again, we have to bring out the best in the folks, right? The staff, because in order to get the best out of the learner, we have to get out the best in them, right? That those are supporting them. So that's, and I believe that leadership and systems are the keys to this for the most part.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because I wish I knew the name of the book off the top of my head, but I'm listening to this audio book. Let me see. I'm gonna have to find it. But it was basically talking about it's beneficial to create a work culture where you create leaders. So if anybody quits, it's so easy to promote the next person as opposed to having that turnover, not having basically you're just going through a dry spell. The ball drops in a lot of ways because that position's empty, and it's good to create leaders. And like you said, is one of those things where when you have leaders, especially from a behavioral component, when it comes to supporting intense behaviors, those are the people you want in that position because they know how to problem solve, they know how to delegate. Because if it's a crisis, you might have to delegate. Hey, go grab this. Hey, call this person. So it's good that you came in, you saw the deficit and identified, hey, we need more leaders in this environment as opposed to people just watching a workshop and sending them out there to handle
That's
crisis situations. I should be laughing, but I mean, if you stop it, well, okay, I shouldn't be laughing, but if you stop and think about it, that's the reality in a lot of work cultures. And I know when it comes to being a behavior analyst supporting adults, I see that all the time where they're not really focused on making leaders when it comes to informal caregivers. And when I say informal caregivers, I'm talking about support staff. I'm talking about maybe you have that job coach or even the residential manager. You know, it's just all about making sure everybody has the tools they need in a crisis situation. Or I like to say when the person is demonstrating intense emotional distress.
Well, you know, and two, I love how you're thinking, right? You're thinking long. You mentioned I've written 3 books. I've written 14 books now. I have a 15th coming out next month. And one of the books that I'm very proud about is called Positional Authority Ain't Leadership, right? And so essentially that's what you're saying. And you're absolutely right. It's not about our position. There's plenty of people that have positions of authority, right? A quote unquote leadership position, but they're not really leaders, in my opinion. And it's not that they're bad people, but I do see a lot of bad behavior. And so people really
Mm.
need to understand what leadership is. And I've defined leadership. First of all, Aubrey Daniels said the measure of the leader can be found in the behavior of the followers. And that's important because if we understand how to get the best behavior out of people, we're going to produce the best results, right? And get them in the right way. If we only measure leadership based on results, and some people will do that. Oh, look, they're crushing. Look at the results. Well, there's lots of ways to get results that are not ethical, right? They're coercive. We're using aversives to force people, and that kind of toxic culture has a really bad outcome on the staff, but not just the staff, but the consumers that we're serving. So we really need to help people understand leadership, right? And so I've defined it by 4 functional response classes, but I just say hats, right? That's a heuristic, or it's a way for us to easily understand, right? And it's built on the 4-term contingency, right, for behavioral analysis. And I'm actually writing a research paper on it with Dr. John Gosserio because nobody's actually defined what leadership is. There's a lot of great leadership theories out there, like servant leadership. I love it. Transformational leadership, authentic leadership, et
No
cetera, et cetera.
operational definition.
That's it. So I'm going to tell you what it is right now, very simply, right? It's 4 hats. First is the leading hat. And the leading hat is an MO, motivating operation, right? That means that you engage in behavior that has value and behavior altering effect for somebody. When you, in short, inspiring people. If somebody doesn't know the why behind something, right? They don't see what's in it, they're down or whatever. We need to lift them up. We got to create a want for them, right? So that's the leading hat. Now, the next hat is the training hat, because having a why and a want is wonderful, right? It means I have some sort of motivation ready to go, but I still have to have the knowledge and skills to do it. So I got to make sure I equip my people with those knowledge and skills. So whether you're directly working with somebody, right, you're supervising them, or you're at a organizational leadership level, you got to make sure we have the systems to equip people with the knowledge and skills and effectively doing it, right? Building fluency in some of these key skills, not a sit and get, right? Now, both the leading hat and the training hat are antecedents. And antecedents in the organizational behavior management world, right, when we use them, are things that are intended to get behavior going, right? Now, we're not talking about like SDs, the things that we look to what are triggering behavior challenges, right? We're talking about things that come before performance, right? Training, goal setting, planning, right? Telling. These are all things intended to get behavior going. But what we know clearly from the science of human behavior is that it's the consequences that keep the behavior going, right? So, where the training hat is about skill acquisition, the coaching hat is about supporting the generalization of learned skills into the natural environment. It's not enough to know what to do. You've got to do it in the environment and produce the naturally occurring consequences that are going to maintain your behavior, right? So training is about instructing or telling. Coaching is about asking, helping people to be more aware of their behavior and the outcome of their behavior, right, towards some critical results or goals you're working towards, right? So again, helping them to behave well enough or long enough that they produce these outcomes, because it's the only way you can fade. So we got the leading hat, that's an MO, training hat, that's about skill acquisition, the coaching hat, that's about the generalization of those learned skills into the natural environment, and the final hat is the managing hat. That's about maintenance of those behaviors, right? And we maintain those through good systems. A good system maintains our behavior the same way when you drive every day. Nobody's got to come out and tell you what to do, right? There are contingencies in place that get you to your destination safely, effectively, efficiently, and all this stuff. And if you do the right thing, that's what happens. If you do the wrong things, here's what might happen. You get the rumble thing when you're driving off the road, you get a flat tire, you get pulled over, you get a ticket, and it goes on and on. And you accept these consequences for your challenging behavior, right? For lack of a better term, because there's so much positive reinforcement embedded into the system of driving. Every time you're getting closer and closer to a destination and reaching that destination, which is the ultimate cause or the long-term contingency, right? Your behavior is under probably contingencies of positive reinforcement because you're wanting to go there. And so that's the trick with the systems, is that we have to design systems with the end in mind and have it so it's deliberately providing positive reinforcement for value-added behavior. So now when you're managing, all you got to do is push those buttons. Everybody knows what happens. You do the right thing, here's what happens. You do the wrong thing, here's what happens. Now, the big thing people in our field miss, they're like, well, how do I reinforce adult behavior? And they go right to socially mediated stuff, right? They're like, well, I'm going to give them a gas card, this, that, and the other. Guys, that is not what's going to maintain behavior, right? In the environment where there's lots of challenges going on. That should be a token of your appreciation. And that's wonderful. Here's, you want to maintain behavior. Everybody wants to feel valued and everybody wants to produce valued outcomes, right? When I say everybody, we're going to say most people, right? Help people feel valued, help them produce valued outcomes. How do you do that? Feel valued provide them voice and choice, give them input, recognize what they're doing incrementally, that they're making growth, right? Recognize appropriate behavior more than your correcting behavior, and correct it in a way that's helpful, not hurtful. So in short, establish yourself as a positive reinforcer, and of course, help them produce valued outcomes. That's the training and the coaching hat, right? Give them the knowledge and skills to be successful, and then help them do it well enough and long enough that they are successful. So those are the four hats, and this is how I say we operationalize leadership. And I can't wait for this research to be published because nobody's done this before. But it's all written out very clearly in my positional authority and leadership. Did all that make sense?
Yes. So I want to encourage you to give us the four-term contingency in one word and say it slow. So just in case somebody is driving or somebody's cleaning in the kitchen and they didn't catch it, instead of them rewind, they could get it. And then from there, I want you to give me a real life example of when you use the four-term
Oh, I
contingency.
love it. I love it. Well, so you wanted the four, so you don't want the four hats, you want the four term contingency, what that means, right? So it's the MO, motivating operation, right? Antecedents, behavior, and consequence, right? A lot of times we talk about the ABCs of behavior. This adds in the MO at the beginning. The four hats now are the leading hat, the training
Yes.
hat, the coaching hat, and the managing hat, right? The
Yes, that
leading
right
hat is the MO, right? The training hat is and then the coaching hat, right? Oh, well, the training has the antecedents. The coaching hat begins to start to generalize, right? That from an antecedent, getting them in touch with consequences. So it's bridging that gap to getting them in touch with the consequences that are going to maintain their behavior. And of course, the managing hat's the maintenance, right? So those both are the C's. Just the coaching hat connects it, and everything revolves around the behavior there.
And you
So
said leading, coaching.
leading, training, coaching, and managing, right? Yep, leading, training. And I have I in my business card that you'll leave at the end, I have a YouTube channel in there, and I
Okay.
have something called the Leadership 90 Compass. And they're very short videos, around the 90-second videos. And I have something very specific to the four hats of leadership, is what I call it. So people can go check those videos out. And I encourage them to subscribe. It's all about the science of human behaviors applied to leadership and in organizations.
And a real life example when you applied this concept or when you
Yeah.
witnessed it.
Yeah, well, so I want to say that here's another good thing about the great thing about the hats is that not only can you apply organizationally or as a team leader, but you can apply it as self leadership, right? So, if I'm going to do two examples, one for yourself, one for like your even RBT can do it, right? To show you that you can do it anywhere. The thing with being a leader is the higher up the org chart you go, the more people you can affect, right? So if it's myself and I'm wearing the leading hat, I need to have a vision. What is my vision? What do I want to do? Right. My vision is driven by my why. I want to help people, right? I want to motivate. Well, how am I going to do this? Well, I had a vision that I'm going to, get my doctorate. I'm going to write some books. I'm going to do some things, right? That are all right. Great. I'm inspired, and I'm having this long term goal where I'm helping people at scale. But now I got to equip myself in the knowledge and skills to do this. How am I going to do this? Well, I decided to go back to get my doctorate and get my specialist degree as well, 2 degrees in leadership. Wonderful. Okay. But those are giving me maybe the knowledge and skills to be successful. But now I got to apply those things, right? So now I got to shift over to the coaching hat. Now, a couple of things is that I can try to recruit feedback from my own environment, right? To see I'm doing this, what is happening as a result of me doing this. But if you're not that skilled, it's hard to discriminate the nuanced changes in those, right? So I can look at like videos of other people and have some sort of standard that I'm doing, to see what it should look like. But ideally, I'm probably going to try to find somebody to mentor or coach me, right? To help me understand what I'm doing and the results that I'm doing, right? To help me shift. And maybe while they're mentoring me, they got to put back on their training hat for me because I'm missing some skill, right? So I need to revert back and they got to give me some sort of skill. But anyways, or tell me to go learn more, right? Put back on my own training hat. So that's the coaching hat. And the final thing is the managing hat. It's the things that we all do. We have schedules, right? We stick to schedules, right? We make sure that we take notes on things. We have to manage our own behavior. We have to maintain our own behavior to stay on schedule. I might put contingency in place, like I do, Premack principle, grandma's law, right? I do the hard stuff before I, do the easier stuff. I reward myself on the weekend by going out and not working and doing something else. So this is how I help to maintain my behavior. I intersperse hard things with easier things, right? So it doesn't become overwhelming to me. I schedule my day around what works best for me. Like this time of the day, I usually don't like to do intellectual things. The morning is where I'm fresh. My mind is firing. So that's part of the managing hat. So now if I zoom out and I look at it as an RBT, leading hat, training hat, coaching, and managing hat, I'm working with a learner and they don't look like they want to be engaged. I'm going to try to do things that are going to get them excited about it, right? Now, when they're doing a plan, part of that plan is almost absolutely always trying to probably build some sort of skill with them, right? For them to be successful. But I don't just want the skill, I got to support the generalization of the skill, right? So I make sure they know what to do. Now I get them to do it. So now they see by doing it, they're getting in touch with some sort of reinforcement. And this is where I begin fading my prompts, right? I got the skill, right? And I want to prompt them less because they're doing, I don't have to actually prompt the skill itself. I want to maybe prompt using the skill at this point. And they're like, oh, I get this kind of thing, right? And then, of course, there's the maintenance of the skill. And then we could zoom up and we could go to a team leader and say, all right, my team is down. All right, I got to put on the leading hat. I got to get them fired up. I want to give them voice and choice and ask them what's important. By the way, with the learner, they need voice and choice as well, right? We do preference assessments with them, find out what's important to them. They should be involved in the development of their plan, right? They're huge if they're able to. And so with that, then I got to make sure that my team has the knowledge and skills, right? Then I coach them. I shift from telling them to asking them. And you said this earlier, we got to create more leaders. And this is how we do this because we help people to better assess, problem solve, make decisions, and take actions that produces effective outcomes. If all you're doing is telling people what they need to do, they become prompt dependent on you. And we don't want that, right? Because they're not thinking for themselves. And we're all prompt dependent on something like the GPS. We all use the GPS to go to that same place over and over again. That's prompt dependency because we have not had to discriminate, right? The information in the environment to make our own decisions to change our behavior based on it. And then, of course, there's the managing part of it. Though, being at a team leader, and maybe I got them reporting out what's going on, right? And I'm reinforcing to maintain, or maybe I got to correct behavior, and that's okay. If I've established myself as a positive reinforcer, people are going to be far more likely to accept corrections with them, especially it's how I deliver it, when I deliver it, et cetera, et cetera. So the 4 hats are very generalizable to anybody, anywhere.
So I got hat 1, lead, hat 2,
Leading. It's leading because it's all behavior, right?
Leading. Yep. The second hat is mentoring, coaching.
Training. It's leading, training, coaching, and managing. Leading, training, coaching, and managing.
And I bring this up because I feel like, I don't want to say I feel like, I know from personal experience as a BCBA, when you have somebody that has a support staff, an informal caregiver, a lot of BCBAs don't realize it. When you do your trainings, you're creating leaders. And the reason why I say that, because I've read somewhere, one of the reasons why there's turnover in the residential setting, because staff do not feel supported, especially when there's intense behaviors involved. So if you go into the training as a BCBA, I'm going to not only train them on the plan, but I'm also going to create leaders. This will allow them to feel supported. So despite any emotional distress the person, their individuals going through, they'll know how to handle it in the moment, as opposed to it creating burnout. I'm quitting, and now a new face is coming in. And there's also studies that show what actually increases the rate and the frequency of emotional distress behaviors is when there's staff turnover, because now this person has to readjust to a whole new person. So with that being said, I'm going to utilize your concept, but disseminate it to a BCBA actually working with a support staff. So you're doing the training, right? You trained everybody in the behavior support plan.
Now we got to coach them.
What did you say?
Now we have to engage in coaching behavior, right?
Yes. And now
they can tell you what's supposed to do in the plan. And now you got to help them to do it in the environment, right? And you shift to asking them, not telling them. Tell me what you're about to do. Tell me why you're about to do it. What are you outcomes? What did you do? What happens as a result of you do? What might you do differently, right? So this is how we support that generalization of the skill. And then, of course, there's managing. And supervisors absolutely should be wearing the 4 hats. It's all the same thing, right? Those are all just titles. Anybody that's responsible for the performance of others should be wearing these 4 hats, right? And how do you know when to wear the 4 hats? I just use in the book, I talk about using the performance diagnostic checklist, right? If somebody's not performing to a standard, just put that lens on, because that lens is grounded in the science of in the 4-term contingency. The original one was built by John Austin, which is a good friend of mine, great guy. But it's just an easy way. I believe in keeping things very simple. Keep it simple, and people are going to be more likely to learn and apply.
Yes. And with that being said, I'm just going to give everybody like a pretend case study applying this concept. You you're training, you're creating your leaders at this point. So you first off, you want to identify the why. Why do you want to be a support staff? What is it about you working here in this home? And definitely chime in, Paul, if I miss anything, because I want to disseminate this appropriately so people that work with adults kind of have an idea of how to apply the concept.
Yeah.
So we got leading, first asking the support staff, why are you in this position? What do you like about your job? And then we get our why. Then the second step is the training. So we're actually training them on the behavior support plan. I really want to emphasize always focus on the proactive. Yes, Paul.
Pause on that. Pause on that real quick, right? So it's good that you're asking them about the why in terms of why they did it. But
Okay.
now there's the part of the why should I be trained in this plan, right? Now, a
Mm,
lot of people say, do it for the learner. That's wonderful. Yes, do it for learner. I'd like to think that we're all in there for that. And I think that is part of it. But you can't make it about the learner without making it about the staff. So we want to make sure that
mm,
we show them all the potential reinforcers that are in there. One of the big reinforcers for anybody, especially in this field, is they want and they need their job to be easier because it's stressful. If
mm,
you do this, if you follow the plan, you're going to see better behavior with the learner. Your job's going to get easier, right? And I know it's one of your values to help this learner feel to get better. I know that's going to feel good for you to see them behaving better, see their family happy, right? So you're giving them that vision, like, oh, I want to do this. Look at all the positive outcomes, because it's not going to change right away, right? The more of an MO there is, the more likely to stick with those challenges. And this is also where if you shape the coaching piece of it, like you don't drop them in to do the big thing, right? You look for quick wins, what we call, right? They end up doing something that requires a little low response effort and it produces a visible and valued outcome. You don't try to change the whole day, for example. You try to change one transition for that, right? So like, oh, I can do this, you know? So that shifts from the training to the coaching hat, right? Setting that condition up for them.
yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you just digging a little deeper for our audience. And now we're going to the training portion. And correct me if I'm wrong. This is just training them on the plan, training them on the proactive strategies. And I always like to emphasize when it comes to working with adults, really focus on the proactive strategies. And the reason why I say that, because a lot of times support staff, their main thing is, how can we turn it off? How can we turn it off? How can we turn it off? But if you focus more on the proactive, you really won't have to focus on turning it off.
That's
So the
exactly right.
antecedent-based strategy to focus on the training, and then we have the next portion, which is coaching. And I'm going to disseminate it when working with supporting adults, and you're coaching the support staff at this point. It's basically you, like you said, whatever you do see that's good, you focus on that and then you try to shape it. So yes, you, and I like to think of the analogy because some of us had cases where, oh, you wanted to say something?
No, I want to make so the coaching. Yes, you are right. Right. I want to recognize what's going well, but I'm going to come up with a coaching plan for them. Right. And so this is
Mm,
where what I need them to do with the coaching is actually use the skills that they learned in the natural environment. My goal as a coach is to get them to behave well enough and long enough that they produce the outcome. Right. So I need them to reflect on what they're doing, and they already need to know what they're doing right before I do that. Because I'm not going to ask questions if they have not been trained in it, right? And we need to train to fluency, not just giving a sit and get, right? They need to be able to do this stuff, right, without having to think very hard about it. And we give them cheat sheets and stuff like that, job aids, we call those. And so now the coaching says, hey, tell me what you're about to. We have a plan. They understand the why behind the plan, which is what we're going to do. Okay. And we say, we might watch them and we say, tell me what you're doing right now. Why did you do it? Or maybe we follow up in 5 minutes and we have a brave break. Tell me what you
mm,
did. Tell me what happened, what you did. Was that aligned with the plan? It wasn't. What should you have done? And what might you do next time you go in there to work with it, right? So again, we're getting them to reflect on their behavior and the outcomes of it. This is how we're getting them to assess, problem solve, make decisions, and take future actions that are going to produce better outcomes. Or Maybe they produce, really great outcomes. Now they're at least connecting their behavior with those outcomes, so they know they can do it again. Because a lot of times, people don't understand that, like the prevention thing. The reason like people don't focus so much on prevention is because there's not that immediate result that they're seeing. Right? You're not seeing I did this and everything's great. They're just seeing things are good, and they're not necessarily aligning or connecting it to all the prevention strategies that they put in place, because there's no immediate outcome as a result of that, right? They're
Mm.
not aligning it to their behavior, at least.
Yes, yes, yes. And an example of that would be at dinner time, the person normally has um, emotional distress. So I've been trained on the plan. I'm present as a BCBA. This is a coaching moment. So I guess they would tell me what they're doing in that moment, and then I'm just giving them feedback as they're supporting the person during dinner time.
Well, that's right. So with that, you might say, I would do a couple things, right? I would say, how do you want your feedback? Because I can prompt you from over the side, right? To prompt them to do
Mm,
the right thing, right? Or you might let them go, assuming that it's not going to trigger some major behavior, right? And ask them, how do you think it went? Right. Now, remember, they need to know what they're supposed to do, because there's got to be that process that they can reflect back on. Did I follow the process? And this is where having something like going back and referring to, if you break it down to a task analysis, they can pull out the task analysis and you can say, assess how you did. And then go, yeah, I did this, that. Oh, no, I forgot that. Or it's better if they can reflect without the task analysis, but it's kind of like a fading process,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you're asking them to report back. What were you supposed to do? What you do, right? Was there any gap in there? What can we do next time, right? So it really helps to generalize those skills. Ideally, they do that thing and they see like, oh, it was dinner time, and that learner, that resident, they behaved better. They ate their dinner. They threw their spoon only 5 times this time instead of 10 times, right? And they're saying that because I did this, that's what happened. And if that happening is a reinforcer for them, they're probably going to keep doing it in the future, right? And we'll know it's a reinforcer based on that behavior.
Yes. And now we're going to tie into the managing part.
Mhm.
And the managing, and let me know if I'm disseminating this correctly, is basically encouraging the staff a specific time and place of when they can focus on the skill acquisition goals. So, for example, every day after dinner, this is the time that you will focus on the skill. Did I disseminate that correctly?
Well, so that would be, yes, that they would have a system that they're working on for that. But what we're talking about managing, that would be maintaining their behavior. So if that was a skill you want them to work on to make sure that they had a regular schedule for the learner, yes, you're right. So you would just go check intermittently and on a variable schedule. And I might set it on a set schedule at first, but then fade to variable. Uh, are they staying on schedule with their learner, right? So that would be the maintenance of it. And they know you're going to check it, and you have like a little data sheet. You say, great job. Keep up the good work,
Okay.
because you're doing this, you're providing predictability for the learner, right? Or for the resident. And because you're providing predictability, they're behaving better. They're reaching their goals more, right? So we're making sure that we're letting them know about their behavior and the results, right? Because performance is behavior with results and criteria, right? It's not just a result, but what's the criteria for that result, right? So people know, are they producing those desired outcomes, those desired results? So yeah, I think you were pretty much right on target with it, but just zooming out, you were saying like, are they, are they staying on schedule? Yes. Which is, you want to make sure that that continues, because you want to maintain that behavior.
Okay, so it's more so me managing them to
Yes.
make sure they're applying what they've been taught.
They're wearing the same hats, right? You want them to engage in the managing hat with the student, right? So you might be having your managing hat on, looking at how they're maintaining the student's behavior.
Okay, all right. Um, and my last question, in December 2024, you published an online newsletter titled The Behavioral on your online newsletter titled The Behavioral Brief. And the topic of this newsletter was called Dignity and Safety, the Case for Prevention, First Crisis Management. You emphasize the importance of understanding antecedents, teaching replacement behaviors, and building positive relationships and making data driven decisions. I especially love the image you included that read, "Prevention is better than the cure." So what inspired you to write this article at this time? And how does the message continue to apply to your journey today?
Yeah. Now, in full disclosure, I have my own, business, Heart and Science International, right? My own consulting business that I do like training and coaching, keynotes and stuff like that. I also am a director for the Professional Crisis Management Association. Now, and I say in full disclosure because I'm going to say something, but I'm saying it because I believe it 100%. I could have went and worked anywhere. I'm at a level where a lot of people want me to come work for them, right? And so I chose where I was going to work very carefully. PCMA in their systems, professional crisis management and everyday behavior tools, it is the greatest crisis management system that I've ever seen. There's nothing that compares to it because it's truly fluency based. And Shanda, when I tell you, you go into a situation, right, and you know nothing about all these procedures, and you find yourself, you see yourself, you experience yourself building fluency in these things that were completely foreign to you. And when I say fluency, I mean that when you leave there, you can do things automatically without thinking about it and precisely, and you don't forget about it. Other crisis management systems, and when I say other, I mean every single other crisis management system, you forget it because they're not fluency based. They will have you come up and demonstrate something 2 or 3 times, and then they send you on your way. You will forget that. That does not build fluency. We have people rep things 30, 40, 50 times
Oh, wow.
so they don't forget it. And this is really important when it comes to managing crisis, because if you get into a situation you can't remember it, you're going to hurt the learner or you're going to hurt yourself or both. And it's going to create situations where if we have people hurt, it's going to create law suits and all this stuff. So nothing is like professional crisis management and everyday behavior tools because it's fluency based. Now, in that, it is completely based in behavior analysis, right? And we talk a lot about prevention, and part of prevention is giving people the skills and we're assessing like what's at the root cause, just like we do in FBA, right? They learn about doing this stuff because it's about the practical application of the science of human behavior, and we should have a heavy focus on prevention. And so most when I say most, I mean like again every other one, right? And some give lip service to prevention, like maybe they give a page or two. We have a robust section on prevention, right? Because it should be all about prevention. We don't want to restrain anybody. It's the last thing I ever wanted to do, right? And I recognize that if we really focus on getting to the root cause of this learner's behavior, because maybe, hey, the learner's challenged with math, and you continue to provide them math and they're not fluent in it, right? And they've learned that if I do these behaviors, I can escape that stuff. Well, let's put prevention in place. Let's scale it back to something that they can actually do that might be just maybe a little bit challenging. And let's get them in touch with some sort of reinforcement for doing that. Let's build that skill up. Let's teach them how to take a break and all these things that are typical to doing behavior analysis with them. We want to give people these basic principles as an understanding of prevention, right? This is really important. So you need a robust prevention approach, right? Let's learn how to deliver praise and do it right, because there's different ways to do praise. Let's learn about scheduling and predictability, and all this stuff is part of PCMA. So when we talk about prevention should be robust. All others start at de-escalation. And to me, we don't want it to escalate at all. Now, of course it does, but now you also need a very nuanced way to escalate, not just the one thing that we do in one toolbox. Escalation comes in different phases a lot of times, right? So how are we going to approach each level of escalation? So that's what pretty much I'm meaning. Like, we really want to prevent a crisis from happening in the first place, and I want to prevent escalation from happening in the first place. And I do that. There's I've done some writing and done some videos on trauma informed care. Now, I don't, one of the things, but my biggest concerns about trauma informed care was that it's hard to measure,
It's
and
not
so
objective.
right, it's not objective. Now, listen, I have no problem with that. In fact, I want to say this here, that I really love the principles of trauma informed care. Right? I mean, principles like uh, giving choice. Right? I think that's friggin' important. Right? People need to have choice. I want to make sure that people, that we have cooperation. Right? People have safety. I want to make sure that there's trustworthy and transparency. Right? And you heard me saying I want empowerment with voice and choice. and all these things. I want to respect diversity, right? Huge. You know what I call this, Shonda? I call it the way shit should be. Why wouldn't we create an environment where we have safety built into it, not just for the learner, but if you're working, Shonda, with a learner that's been traumatized, but you don't feel safe, trusted, right? Or can trust the people around, you don't feel supported by your peers, right? You don't feel like it's collaborative, you have voice and choice. How are we going to get you to bring out the best in the learner if we're not getting the best out of you, right? So I think this is very important. If you're going to build an environment that's truly trauma informed, well, you need to use organizational behavior management principles. And first of all, we start with the end in mind. How are we going to measure that this organization is actually trauma informed? Then we might use something simple like social validity. I'm fine with that. We ask our clients or learners, do you feel safe, right? Do you feel supported by your peers and everybody? You know, do you feel that there's trustworthiness and transparency in that? Do you feel empowered, right? Do you feel you're being respected as diversity? You feel like there's collaboration? Wonderful. Let's use that. Okay. So if we want that to happen, what skills do we need to embed with the client or learner? How can we create something where they actually are behaving safe, right? Where they create trust among other people, right? Where they're also supporting their peers and they're collaborating with them, right? And they're speaking up, they're using their voice and they're selecting and all that stuff. Okay, wonderful. So if that's the behavior we need them to engage in, what do we need the frontline workers do, like the RBT? Well, they need to do this, that, and the other, right? Okay. If we want them to do these things, again, how are we going to help them feel safe? How are we going to help them be trusted? And we have to identify the key behaviors that they need to engage in and how we're going to reinforce those behaviors. And then we go up. If we want the RBT to do this, that, what do we need to do for the BCBA and how are we going to create the environment for them? And everybody should have it. So we need to understand these behaviors, right? What we need people to engage in, how we're going to reinforce those behaviors. Because when we chain those behaviors together, that's like behavior chaining, but it's performance chaining. I call it the performance alignment map in my books. Then we're going to produce this result of trauma-informed care. Until we have that, to me, it's lip service when somebody says we're a trauma-informed organization. If you have not identified the specific behaviors people need to engage in, and we don't have measures for those behaviors and reinforcers, how do you really know, right? How do you really know? So, yeah, that's my spiel on that, and I'm sticking to it, and I've written a lot about it.
And I'm gonna, before we wrap this up, I'm actually gonna disseminate what you just shared. The four key points I got from you is fluency. So when it comes to you as a behavior analyst supporting the adult population, you can't expect to train on a plan one time and expect your support staff to hit the ground running.
That's
To
right.
promote fluency, some of the things you can do is offer monthly trainings until data shows that the individual being supported is behaviorally stable. And if not, you could collect behavioral data on the staff to get those treatment integrity checks. So you're not only monitoring, oh, go ahead.
I wouldn't wait till monthly if I had a plan. I'd want to give them a good, robust training right there, and I'd want to fade out, right? I want them to be able to tell me what they're supposed to do. I want them to be able to show me what they're supposed to do, right? I want them to be able to do it quickly. This lets me know they might be ready to go in there. And then I need to observe them doing it in the setting because it's not enough to know what to do or how to do it, but now you have to know when to do it, right? And you have to do it how you've been trained to do it. And nothing's ever perfect because there might be some nuances. It's very hard to get a plan precise enough that you just do this thing, right? We have to adjust. That's the nature of the game. That the science doesn't give us the answers, but it helps us to find the best ones, right? But you do it and you see how the learner responds and we make the adjustments, right? So when we talk about fidelity, we talk about doing it as planned, but a lot of times we have to make adjustments with those plans. But before we do that, we got to make sure it's being run correctly.
And when it comes to fluency, I know from personal experience, sometimes you work at an organization where you don't have the luxury to be on top of the support staff. So if you have an intense caseload, and the reality is you can't do a weekly or daily check-in, at least do it monthly. Whether it's your trainings or, those
Well,
in-person. Oh, go
what
ahead.
you're talking about there is the managing hat, right? And I think
Okay.
the monthly would be fine for that. Now, here's what I'll say to the organization, those expectations. If the organizations are only providing you the opportunity to do it monthly, they're screwing themselves in the foot, right? They're shooting
Mm,
themselves in the foot. They're also hurting the learners and they're hurting the staff. We
mm.
wonder why we're having such turnover. That's a great example of why we have turnover like that, because people want to feel valued and they want to produce valued outcomes. If that RBT doesn't know how to run that plan effectively, if we're only getting them to the end of the month, right, because we have not set them up for success, they're getting in contact with lots of aversives along the way. This makes them want to leave. But if we help them to successfully implement that. We get them in touch with a quick one. They feel that, and not they feel, they see that they're making progress, measurable progress. They're doing this thing, and the learner's getting a little bit better, and a little bit better, and a little bit better, and they're feeling good, and they're being reinforced by those outcomes and by the parent and by the BCBA, right? Or again, they're just seeing those outcomes. That's how we keep them to stay and we build it. But if we just give them something and they say, oh, I'll be back in a month, that's not going to work. I can't drop my fighter into the ring and expect that they're going to take whatever skill I taught them and they're going to perform it successfully if it's a new skill. If you have a seasoned RBT, right, that's been through this, those behaviors start to get very generalizable. Then it's just about following the plan, right? It gets easier for them. But a lot of these guys are coming in, and just because they pass a 40-hour course, they don't know what they're doing. Nobody would. You wouldn't know it. I wouldn't know it, right? So when they become seasoned, they start to understand the principles of behavior, and they start to understand how to make adjustments in vivo. And of course, they understand the plans at a deeper level, but they need to communicate well with their BCBA to tell them what they're doing and what's happening, so adjustments can be put out that way. This is where I believe self-monitoring and reporting out becomes really important, where they talk about what they did today, what outcomes occurred, that I think as a part of maintenance schedules should a minimum occur weekly. If it's a new plan, I might have it record daily, right? Where they report out on a Google form. And they also say like, hey, I feel like I need help, or no, I'm doing fine with this, right? Because they need support. If they need help, but they're not getting it, that's not okay. And it might not be Shanda's fault because she's scheduled to get there in a month and because of her caseload, but the organization has a system that they need to adjust, because that's not going to help the learner. And that's certain because the RBTs not having success, and this is where they get turnover. And the bottom line is people start quitting, right? They quit on the job, right? They might be there and eventually they find another place to go on. And the cycle occurs again. And it's not good for the field either, because they're not producing the outcomes. So people are like, well, ABA doesn't work. ABA can't not work, right? It's just a science, right? If we do it right based on what the needs of the learner are and looking at the environment, making those adjustments, we're going to get the right outcomes. It's just about doing it in the right way.
So you're saying from an organization, I'll just say this real quick, get your feedback and I'll wrap it up because I want to be mindful of your time. But you're saying when it comes to promoting fluency, if I'm an ABA organization supporting adults, I need to have it within my systems. When teaching a new skill to the support staff, there's at least daily trainings until they demonstrate that they're competent. Is that
Well,
right?
it might not be
Or at least
training. It could be I train them in the plan right now, right? And I do it well, right? And then I need to shift to coaching. What they need to do is wear the 4 hats, right? Of leadership. I need to inspire my person. I got to give them knowledge and skills. And then I need to shift to coaching, right? And I need to make sure that RBT is performing the plan as intended. I can't just send them out there and not observe what they're doing. And then I fade that, right? I'm going to fade my coaching, till it's some sort of bait and it's. But if you got a RBT going in to work with a new client, a new learner, I need to make sure they're doing the right thing in the right way, right? As that plan was intended, because it's hard to put nuances and plans and everything. And especially if it's RBT, I argue it's unethical to do that, right? To just drop them in, right? But before I'm even going to do that, I need to ensure some level of fluency with the plan itself, because they have to make real-time decisions here. They don't have time to do this. Now, maybe I put a big visual checklist, something they can refer to more complex things, that's fine. They can build, but there's some key things I need them to be fluent with. Like, for example, if they get out of their seat and they're going to elope, right? What do we do? You don't have time to make a decision here. You need to act. What is it that the plan says to do? If they don't know, they're going to make up things, and this is where they get hurt and the learners get hurt and all sorts of bad things happen. So the 4 hats is what everybody needs to wear, including the org, right? To make sure those systems are in place.
And okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I appreciate you sharing all this information. We do have to wrap it up at this point. Um, do you have anything you want to plug before we end this call?
You'll attach my business card. I already dropped in my my author's page, right? I think I dropped that in the link there, right? So check out my books. That particular book that I'm talking about, Positional Authority and Leadership, it talks about all those 4 hats. Maybe you don't want to read the book. make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel because I have like these little nuggets of leadership tips. I do have a book coming out. It's not on that list yet. I'm very proud of it. It's called Finding Your Authentic Self, The Fight to Be You. It's about an hour read, but man, I dig. I mean, I got very vulnerable in it, and I just opened my world to people, including my own thoughts and including like things that make me cringe that I did, and I put a behavior analytic lens on it to say like, why did I do these things, and what does it really mean to be your true self, right?
Mm.
And I explain it kind of scientifically, and I don't pretend to be a guru. I'm just a guy that says I struggled like everybody else out there. Here's what my struggle looked like. I understand now that I was a big part. I was my own enemy. Not
Mm.
understanding, I just kept seeing things happening and thinking that was others, where
Mm.
I was the common denominator, right? So I
Mm.
talk about that a little bit. That'll be out in September. And again, it's our read. I made it short on purpose. And I just think all my books have something special in it to me, and they have a nuanced thing that will help people, all of them, because that's my mission in life to do that. I just think this one in particular, because it's a short read, because nobody's ever talked about authenticity and tried to operationalize it. And, I think it could really help a lot of people because for me, when I'm really living as my authentic self, I feel so good. It
Yes.
feels wonderful just to be me. But a lot of people think this is just me, but is it? Or are those
Mm.
responses shaped by your environment that have kept you safe, that
Mm.
allows you to escape aversives, right? So you got to be aware of those things. It's hard. It requires radical vulnerability, right? It requires radical acceptance. And the radical vulnerability and acceptance, we got to make sure we get through like our confirmation bias, right? We tend to see the world in a certain way because it confirms our existing bias. And that's hard to cut through. That's where it starts with the vulnerability.
Oh man, sound like you're gonna ruffle a few feathers with this book.
Yeah, man.
Ah,
Yeah.
and I just say that because some people they don't want to hear that. They want to hear the feel me good stuff. So, like I said,
Yeah.
you might ruffle some feathers with this.
I kept it real, man. I had to put myself on blast with it. Like, look, yeah. So
Yes. Well, sounds good. Definitely check out his book, all his information he just plugged. You'll see in the description section. So if you listen to this, the seed has been planted. The question is, how are you going to apply it? From the one and only Shanda J, your BCBA. All right, goodbye, everyone.